Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
So what do people know about Lady Bird deeds? Probably nothing, but I found such a smart guy, and it's a wonderful attorney. He's an estate planner attorney. It's Brian Mangines, M-A-N-G-I-N-E-S. And Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here, Anita.
Well, it's a pleasure, though, because you know, reputation, sometimes lawyers don't have the greatest reputations, but you are the friendliest, the nicest person to be so smart. And this was a great idea because I have not heard of this before.
Well, it's a estate planning technique that's often overlooked, estate planning, and it really offers a very simple alternative to having to draft up a full estate plan using a revocable living trust. It's not perfect for all circumstances, but when it makes sense, it is very effective and very well.
So take us from the beginning. What actually is this? Who needs it? And how would you even start to position it?
Okay, so what we're is a Lady Bird deed, which the Florida statutes call an enhanced life estate deed. That's the official title, but it's commonly known as a Lady Bird. And essentially, it is a way to pass property upon your death to whoever you want to have the property by what's called operation of law, which means it avoids probate. So let's chop this down a little bit more. First, let's start with probate. If people aren't familiar with what probate is, that's a court-supervised process where a will is admitted, an estate is admitted, and it's a very costly process. It's a time-consuming process and very tedious. Palm Beach County, it takes probably 9 to 12 months to get an average probate done. In Florida, you must use an attorney for formal administration, which is anything over $75,000. So most people want to avoid probate. So one way to do that is a revocable living trust, and we can talk about that in a minute. But let's just use the situation of elderly mom, husband's passed away. Say she has one son, doing well in life, no issues, and she wants to figure out a way to get that property to her son when she passes away, but she doesn't want to lose control during her life. In other words, she may want to sell it, she may want to mortgage it, she may want to improve it, she may not want to improve it and let it just kind of go, not into disrepair, but just kind of like go down over time. So we don't want her to lose any control that she would have during her lifetime. But if we just have a deed that says her, then she'd either have to go to probate court upon when she passed away. So if she had just what's called a life estate, and she wants to pass it to her son, if it was just a normal life estate, then she would actually have to get permission from her son if she wanted to mortgage the property, sell the property, improve the property. So she doesn't have full control. Enter an enhanced life estate deed, otherwise known as the Lady Bird deed. And what the Lady Bird deed says on the deed itself is that during my lifetime, I can do whatever I want to do with that property. I can sell it, I can mortgage it, I can improve it, and I don't have to get anyone's permission. But upon my death, I'm naming the remainder man, good legal term, but the person I want to have it, and that's my only son. So he gets that property automatically by operation of law because this deed is recorded. It's a recorded deed, and therefore the property automatically passes. There's no probate involved. You don't need a trust. It's just a simple way of giving my property to you when I die, but during my life, I've lost no control whatsoever.
So let's say you have a lot of properties. A Lady Bird deed on a lot of properties?
You sure can. You sure can. Now it gets a little more complicated just because, and it's really not so much the number of properties, because if, for example, it doesn't matter how many properties mom has in that situation because she's given it to her only son. Where it gets very complicated is when there's multiple kids. So if you have 4 or 5 kids, and you can imagine some of those kids are married, so now we have in-laws, stepsons, or not stepsons, but daughter-in-laws and son-in-laws. In that situation, it gets very troublesome or could be problematic to hand that property over to 4 or 5 people who become tenants in common, and all of a sudden some want to sell, don't want to sell. So in that situation, it would not be perfect. Also, if the property is a homesteaded property, there could be complications. If, for example, husband and wife are still married, but the house is in, say, husband's name, he can't just give that property away like that, because in Florida there are homestead rights for a surviving spouse, and also, by the way, for minor children. So in a situation where there's minor children involved, a person can't just use the ladybird deed. But in a simple situation, it can work very well.
Okay, so let's move to trust. You know, you have your estate and you have it in a trust. You can also put the person's name in that trust. So why do you have to do a special deed?
Well, a revocable living trust or costly alternative. So this is when there's not a lot of assets. It's just, Mom, I've kept it very simple for purposes, and that's when we use it. But if you have a lot of assets and you have a lot of bank accounts, then a revocable living trust makes more sense. It's still much cheaper alternative than having to go through probate. And I guess for those who don't know, a revocable living trust just means it's a document that you create, applies during your life, and applies at your death. It's revocable, meaning you can amend it, you can change it, you can do whatever you want during your life. But the object is to draft that trust, put in that trust all your wishes, what you want to happen, say during a time of incapacitation during your life, this is how I want to be taken care of, and then upon death, here's where I want my property to go. So that's basically what the idea is, then to what we call fund the trust, or place the assets of a trust, assets that might be in my personal name, put them into the revocable living trust. So bank account, corporate interests, LLCs, we could put them into the trust. Whatever property there is, get that into the trust. And what the law says is that upon my death, that money, all the property that was transferred into the trust is not the person's for probate purposes. So we bypass probate. So that's a way that I would name a successor trustee. So I start out, it's the Brian MANGINES Revocable Living Trust. If anything happens to me, I want my wife Mimi to take over. And if something happens to her too, then maybe I want my 3 kids to take over and manage it for me. So they would just basically pick up the checkbook as the successor trustee, and I don't have to go to probate.
Right. And so you made it very clear, though, Brian. So the ladybird deed is something that if you don't want to put it in a trust, you just want to do that specific. Okay, so can you have a deed for one child, then you have another property, and just do that for another property with the deed? You can keep doing a deed with one person for different properties, right?
That is absolutely correct. So let's just return to the situation where there's 4 kids.
Right.
And let's just say in this situation there happens to be 4 properties and they're all roughly equal value. Then rather give every kid 25% interest in 4 houses, you'd be better off chopping it up 1, 1, 1,
Absolutely.
and 1. And that way there's no arguments, because a big part of my practice, and I'm the youngest of 8 kids, so I've seen a lot.
Oh my goodness!
All the stories I could tell, right?
Oh my heavens!
But because of that, I've seen a lot in my family, and a lot of mostly good.
Are you the only lawyer?
I'm the only lawyer of the kids. My father was a lawyer.
Okay, but you're the only lawyer, so they have to look to you to hopefully.
exactly. So anyway, what I want to do is avoid conflict. We see way too much of it in our office, but to me, protecting your legacy is a big deal, and you don't want to leave a mess for your kids, which is why estate planning is so important. One of the reasons it's so important. But to me, you've worked your whole life. Whatever assets you have, that's 100% of your assets. I don't care if it's $1 or if it's $10 million. To me, that represents a life earnings for people, and I take that very serious. And I just want that property to transfer in a harmonious way and no mess for the kids. Where if you go to probate, it's a mess. So we like to avoid that.
Guest is Brian A. Mangines, and his office is where my office is, and that's how I've become such good friends with him. And he's so He's so nice. He has 20 years of experience. Also, he wrote a fantastic book, and we didn't bring the book with us, but why don't you just take a second and talk about your book a little bit? I loved your book.
Sure. The name of my book is Faith with Focus, How to Live with Passion but Rule Your Life with Reason. And it was just an inner calling for me. It took me about 6.5 years to write.
Right.
And I wrote the book by making a promise to myself that I would commit the first 15 minutes of my day to writing that book. And that's
Is that how you were able to do it?
That's how I was able to do it. And of course, what happens is once you start writing 15 minutes a day, some of those 15-minute sessions would turn into 2.5-hour jam. But I kept writing the book. It was just an inner calling. It's a legal book. But a lot of the references, a lot of the material, a lot of the insight that I communicate in the book comes from my years as an attorney, because I've done estate planning and probate, but I've also done lots of other areas of the law, foreclosure and bankruptcy and employment discrimination and business corporations. And so I've seen people at their best and I've seen people at their worst. And especially when I was doing a lot of bankruptcy and foreclosure, I would tell my clients, focus on getting your business back. Let me take care of the legal issue. You just need to focus or refocus on what made you successful, and this storm is going to pass. It's like a hurricane. Hurricanes, they don't seem like they're ever going to end when they're on you, but they do. And so that the book really is about perseverance. It's about having faith, however you define that word. It's not a religious book. There's perhaps some spirituality in there, but not religious. And then focusing on what's most important to you. And I really believe if you have faith, you have focus, and you persevere, keep a smile on your face.
Yeah, that's who
good
you
things
are.
going to
I have
happen.
to tell you. And we have someone listening. I have to tell you about this. Diane Potter is watching and listening right now. She's the wonderful woman that found Charlie for me to begin with.
Oh, wow.
And she's the one who's now looking for another dog for me. So she's really special in my life. And
Great
so
job,
she
Diane.
does. She focuses on helping people. She flies all
that's
over and
wonderful.
finds dogs. So, yeah, she's special, and she's listening now to us, too. But continuing this whole conversation, and it's something that I like what you said, is that unfortunately families could be very nice to one another, but boy, when someone passes away, if things haven't been clearly distributed, right? And that's what you do so well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I give you a few. I mean, I give you
Yeah.
more examples.
Yeah, give us some
than
examples.
you probably care to hear. But
That's okay.
we've seen a lot of tragedy in our office, and I try and tell the kids that, look, your parents, most cases, right, worked their entire lives to raise the kids, give them good values, do everything right for them. This is their life earnings, and you owe it to them to honor them, to get along. Having said that, what I tell the parents when they come in is if there are certain things that you, for example, you're going to leave one of the kids out of the trust or the will, and even though it's the best reason in the world, the person has $1 billion and the sister is struggling as a teacher trying to raise 2 kids, and so you'd rather have the money go to her versus the son who doesn't need it, you still need to tell that son, because what happens is it's not really the money, it's the emotional.
Yes.
And it's not so much that when the first parent dies, it's that second parent. When that second parent passes away, A, the glue that's maybe kept those kids together, the siblings together, is gone. And B, I think when that second person passes away, the second parent, it's particularly emotional, because that's kind of an end of a generation, and there's not mom or dad to talk to anymore. So it's not required by the law, but I really encourage my clients that if there's something really that's going to be kind of touchy or out of the ordinary, if you sit down and you explain it to Johnny and Susie that this is the way it's going to be, this is why it's going to be, then 2 things are going to happen. They're going to say, okay, Mom, or they're going to say, Mom, I'm not okay with that. Let's talk about it. Maybe come to resolution. But regardless of how it ends up, when Mom passes away, Johnny and Susie both heard it directly from Mom. Whereas if Susie was named the trustee, and Susie for the first time says, by the way, Mom named me the trustee, and she cut you out of the trust or the will, and I have everything, that doesn't go so well. And that's what can tear families apart.
Such a good point. And we actually, Gary Polk is watching now. He's a financial planner. And Well, I like what you were just saying, and I have a friend who just recently, her husband died, and he didn't really want the kids to get anything. He just wanted to. Well, all of a sudden they came out of nowhere because he had mentioned them. If they mention him in the will somehow, even if he's not giving him anything, that gives them rights or did something. Both these people were doctors. And they went to town. They got their own lawyer. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I don't think he really explained it. If he did, he didn't write it down or something because it was a mess.
Yeah, well, the saying in our office is they're all hugging at the funeral, and then 2 weeks later they're suing each other in court. And it's true, unfortunately. So I can't comment specifically on that. But if you're going to disinherit a person, actually, we specifically say the person is disinherited, and for purposes of this document, they're treated as if they're predeceased, so they're gone.
So there's actually a terminology to do that.
Right. So that's how we handle it in our office.
So, but
because if you don't name them, by the way,
Yeah.
damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't name them,
if you don't what?
Well, if you don't name the person that you're going to
Yes.
disinherit, right? So Brian's not mentioned in the will. Well, my 7 brothers and sisters weren't, but I wasn't because I'm the youngest. Obviously, that was a mistake. So now I'm going to sue because it was an admission. So we'd like to name the person and say they're specifically disinherited. And I like to leave it short and sweet because I've been in the courtroom, and more words means more things to argue over, in my opinion.
That's why people have to go to a real experienced attorney, I have to tell you. And Brian is just a wonderful guy. I've known him now for a couple of years, and he's very special, and I hope that you will do that. I'm going to give you his phone number also so that I think I have it down there, but let me just repeat it again. It's 561-245-4709. Write this down. Remember, this is radio talk, and we want you to write the things down. 561-245-4709. He's located, his office is in Boca Raton, but it doesn't matter wherever you're hearing this. You'll make arrangements to meet with them. So getting back to the Lady Bird deed, and you may not know this, why did they name it Lady Bird? You probably do know,
no,
right?
They don't. No, I don't know that if anyone knows why exactly. There was an attorney in Florida.
Isn't it?
Well, first of all, most states don't have this Lady Bird deed. So Florida's one of the handful of states that allow for this. And I don't know who the attorney was, and I'm going to say this is, I don't know, 60s and the 70s, maybe even the 50s, probably 60s or 70s, that came up with this concept. And he named it a Lady Bird deed, and I think it's unclear whether it was named after Lady Bird Johnson or not.
I was just going to say that. I wonder if that's true.
I've heard it was named after Lady Bird Johnson, but I've also seen some stuff that says they're not 100% who gets what and who should be in positions of power.
So did you take a course in psychology?
I did not, but I think it's called on-the-job training as the lawyer.
Yeah, because I can picture it right now. Someone comes in, and by the time you start interesting aspects of their life.
I'm blessed, so I feel like what I do on a day-to-day basis, for me, it's fascinating. I really enjoy what I do and really love. I love the tax issues. It's intellectual and analytical, and it's really important. But I like the people side of this business too, and that's just figuring out what drove that person, and it's an honor to be able to talk to, say, a World War II vet. My father was one, by the way, but to talk about a person in their 90s who lived a great life and just to hear their life story, it's an honor and it's a privilege.
Yes.
So, I can't even call that work most days.
Yeah, your eyes light up all the time, though. That's the thing I found so attractive about you. When you talk, you're so enthusiastic. You think that it's that it's the most wonderful thing that you've just heard, and you want it. You're so captive. You're like a captive audience in a sense when someone's talking to you. But so now let's just do a couple more things. So now you are an attorney in Florida, so you don't practice anywhere else.
I'm licensed in Connecticut. Connecticut is my home state, so I'm licensed in Connecticut and in Florida.
Oh, so do you do any legal issues in Connecticut?
In fact, I just got a phone call from someone in Connecticut that
Talk about coincidence.
Yeah, from my hometown, Trumbull, Connecticut. Anyone listening from Trumbull, Connecticut, hello. But an attorney called me. I did some work for his client. He had a corporate client in Connecticut, but they had a little office in Florida, and they asked me to do a little legal work. And now they're moving from Connecticut to Florida, so they need the Florida attorney, and they've asked if I'd be the Florida attorney for them. So, yeah, but I don't do tons up in Connecticut, but I have a lot of contacts up in Connecticut and refer business back and forth.
Okay, but so you were saying that all states don't have the Lady Bird deed. Who decides what? Does the Florida
The Florida legislature.
Every bar
Yes.
decides what they should be able to carry?
Well, in Florida, it's state law, so it's a state law, so it's statewide in Florida.
Okay.
The two ways that laws get passed in this country are either by statute, the legislature enacts them, or by what's called common law, which is there's no law in the books, but cases come before the court, judges decide, and after a period of time, that case may make it up, say, to the Supreme Court of that state, and that becomes the law of the land. So that's the way. But I think in all the states, it's probably an enacted type of thing.
And you're very happy with this particular deed, aren't you? You
Yeah,
think
especially
really
in Florida, because, if you have a person who, like I said, and this is where I use it, maybe one, maybe two kids who are getting along well, one surviving parent, maybe just one bank account, two bank accounts. And I'm a trust lawyer, so of course I'm a big advocate of trusts. But there are times where trust isn't maybe necessary, or even a will. Sometimes you actually sometimes would like to use a will in probate, very rarely. But if you know there's going to be a big fight, then maybe you're better off with a will, because probate's going to be supervised by a judge. So there are exceptions to the general rule. And the Lady Bird deed is one of those exceptions. So if there's ways that we can pass property, like I said, it's totally seamless. There's no waiting. There's no nothing. The moment that person passes away, that property and all the rights thereto get passed on to the remainderment.
Because you said something when we first started talking, which I think makes a lot of sense. A lot of people say, well, I'm just going to put my son or my daughter or whoever it is on the deed. Mm-hmm. That's what happens. But they do lose control then, right?
If it's a life estate. Or if they put them on the deed during life. That's right. They become tenants in common.
So that's the problem, right?
Right.
If they probably say, well, I'm just going to give everything to them anyway, I'll just put it on there. But you're right. They could have married, something could have happened, and now they don't have control anymore.
That's true. Now, here's another weakness of a Lady Bird. Again, in estate planning, there's usually no one perfect solution. There's usually trade-offs. But let's say, returning to our example, the son is going to inherit the property. But let's say the son passes away before mom, for whatever reason, and son's going to get that property. Now, if mom, because she has an enhanced life estate deed, she could sell it, she could redeed it, she could do whatever she wants. But let's say she doesn't get around to doing it, then that property could end up in probate under the son's probate estate, and maybe that property goes to the daughter-in-law, as opposed to if the mom wanted to what we call protecting bloodlines and pass it down to grandkids and doesn't want to go out to daughter-in-law. So it's not without its issues, but depending on the issues, then it can be an extremely simple and effective way to pass property to future generations.
Right, and it probably doesn't have I bet a lot of people don't really even understand it. That's why your article should be very good, because I hope that people are seeing it and saying, wait, I better talk about that. So let me just tell you, my guest has been Brian Mangines. That's Mangines. You want also, when you talk to him, get his book, Faith with Focus. Great book. We did make it a book of the month a few months ago. And let me just tell you how you get him again. You dial 561-245-4709. Again, 561-245-4709. And let's see, you have a website too. It's Boca Raton Estate Planning Lawyer.com, right?
Perfect.
We'll do it again. Boca Raton Estate Planning Lawyer.com. And we certainly hope that you've enjoyed this as much as I have, and you've learned a lot. And we've had we have another person, Christine. Mule is watching. She's
That's awesome.
she has a home health care. She's really nice. So you've got some nice people, and
That's
hopefully
awesome.
you'll maybe more people. But thank you very much for being
Well,
with
it's
us.
always a pleasure.
Right.